A flying saucer incident in Dulce, New Mexico in the late 1960s. According to a testimony given by former Dulce, New Mexico resident Darren Vigil Gray, it was in the late 1960s that this amazing incident took place on Highway 64 between Dulce and Lumberton. At that time, Darren was a fourth grader on the Jicarilla Apache Reservation in northern Rio Arriba County. At around 6:30 a.m. that particular morning, he claims he saw a flying saucer on his way to a parochial school which was located in nearby Lumberton. A dirty metallic colored disc about 20 feet in diameter passed around 50 feet in the air over his school bus between Dulce and Lumberton, he said. It created all this chaos on the bus, Gray said. He said his brother, then a sixth grader, yelled, "It's a flying saucer!" But the priest driving the van didn't stop to investigate the phenomenon and instead stepped on the gas. Gray said the disc appeared to come from Archuleta Mesa and continued for several miles over the low hills south of the highway. He said cattle mutilation soon began to be reported in the same area, and the mesa was said to be a sort of UFO base. "This experience really changed my whole scope," said Gray, now a well-known artist in Santa Fe. This incident was also confirmed by a former Dulce rancher, Edmund Gomez, who was also among more than a dozen students in that school bus. The Gomez family had the largest ranch in the Dulce area at that time. Beginning around 1975, the Gomez family began to report many incidents of cattle mutilations in their ranch, which were soon investigated by State Patrol Officer Gabe Valdez, who was assigned by the state of New Mexico to find out what was actually happening. To this date, the cattle mutilation incidents in the Dulce area of those years still remain unsolved. Both Edmund Gomez and the late Gabe Valdez have expressed their belief that it was the government and not the aliens that were perpetrating these incidents, and that it may have had something to do with the government's attempt to covertly investigate the radiation effects on local cattle resulting from the 1967 underground nuclear experiment, Project Gaspaille, December 10, 1967, which took place about 22 miles south of Dulce. But getting back to that strange incident involving a flying saucer in Dulce, Edmund Gomez stated that he was also in that bus and was a witness. There were more than a dozen students riding in that bus, he stated. This incident was mentioned in Albuquerque Journal by Tom Sharp on April 5, 1996. By the way, here are some interesting photos taken by the late Paul Benowitz at the Archuleta Mesa when he first started exploring there around 1979-1980. These photos are courtesy of Christian Lambright, author of Ex Descending, who presented these at a conference on June 16, 2018 in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Film developing flaw, lens anomaly, lens flare. It's difficult to say. Here's the first photo taken by Benowitz of alleged objects allegedly entering through a wall of the Archuleta Mesa. Like I stated above, could it have been a film developing flaw, lens anomaly, lens flare? It's difficult to say. But I must mention here that Paul Benowitz's more important sightings did not take place in Dulce, but at the Manzano Underground Storage Nuclear Facility at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The unknown lights witnessed by Paul Benowitz around 1979 and 1980 floating above blue air spikes in the northern slope of Manzano Nuclear Storage Facility, less than a mile from his residence. This is what initially alarmed Richard C. Doty of AFOSI at Kirtland Air Force Base, that prompted him to immediately contact Benowitz in 1979 and made Benowitz eventually steer his attention away from Kirtland Air Force Base to a remote location 200 miles north, that is to Dulce, New Mexico, inside the Jicarilla Apache Reservation. Now let's talk about the phenomenon itself in general. As I stated earlier, the UFO phenomenon seems to be real. There's no question about it. By the way, the phenomenon itself is not new. It has existed since time immemorial. There are historical records of people seeing strange objects in the skies throughout history, such as flying shields. The depiction of the objects seems to be corresponding to the cultural as well as technological understanding of the people of each era. In modern times, the objects seen seem to be more aerodynamic in form. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, people reported seeing strange objects that appeared to be huge, rather crude-looking airships. Later on, actual airships and other dirigibles were built by the U.S. In the early 1980s, when the U.S. was testing prototypes of stealth aircraft, there were many reports of humongous flying triangular craft over the East Coast, which had nothing to do with prototypes being tested by the U.S. Air Force. Reported humongous triangular craft, sometimes reported to be 3 or 4 times the size of a football field, hovered absolutely silent in the night skies. No, they did not belong to the U.S. Air Force. Now to me, here's the bottom line, and it may sound stranger and stranger. The phenomenon appears to me as a temporary paraphysical intrusion into our physical dimension by an unknown intelligence or unknown sentient entities, paraphysically materializing themselves to a pre-selected observer or a group of observers and presenting to the observer as a physical phenomenon. The pre-selection also seems to include a particular location as well as a particular time. The phenomenon seems to be able to materialize and dematerialize at will. Great researchers such as Dr. Jacques Vallée, John A. Keel, and Dr. J. Allen Hynek all seem to be in agreement here. However, the phenomenon does not seem to be able to survive in our physical dimension except for a few seconds or a few minutes at a time. According to these researchers, the phenomenon seems to be able to temporarily affect our physical parameters, such as radar and so on. Yet the phenomenon also seems to be incapable of being photographed with clarity, if at all. Now here comes my personal belief. No matter how strange this may sound, it is simply my personal belief. It is my belief that in this incredibly vast universe, better yet, multiverse, there exist what I describe as paraphysical sentient entities, both benevolent and malevolent types, with a ratio of 2 to 1. That is, 2 out of every 3 entities are of benevolent nature. Eons ago, 1/3 of all cosmic sentient paraphysical angelic entities were thrown out of their special domain by the Creator, of participating in a cosmic shaking revolt led by Lucifer, who became Satan, and his followers, fallen angels, as suggested in Revelation 12:4. Many biblical scholars seem to support this interpretation. They have coexisted with us since time immemorial. It seems that the benevolent types are seldom seen in their temporarily materialized form, but it is my personal belief that they're doing good works without being visible, often giving us protection from perilous situations. The malevolent, deceptive entities are the ones that are paraphysically materializing themselves and presenting themselves as physical alien entities from advanced extraterrestrial civilizations, originating from outer space and piloting or maneuvering their extraterrestrial spacecraft. No, I doubt very much that they are extraterrestrial visitors from outer space, but rather a newly disguised version of extra-dimensional tricksters of old. By the way, please read the following important item. The item refers to the ridiculous claims of photos of the Dulce Base, which is a total information. The photos that you see above refers to a Farmington, New Mexico's power generating plant, also known as San Juan Power Plant. It's ridiculously misidentified as the Dulce Base on the internet. The BHP Billiton, a coal mining operations and utilities company located just north of Highway 64 and 15 miles northwest of Farmington, has been erroneously identified as the Dulce Base. There are some uneducated, gullible folks, and this surprisingly includes some college graduates, on the internet who actually believe that these are aerial photos of the Dulce Base. This misleading aerial photo on top appears on a book written by Gil Carson under the title of Secrets of Dulce Base Alien Underground, and he charges $45 for the book. Now let me emphasize again, there is not a single aerial photo or any photo of the alleged Dulce Base anywhere, simply because there is no credible, tangible, irrefutable documentary evidence whatsoever that the base exists, refuting and totally nullifying the claims of Phil Schneider. You can see these photos above, such as Springfield, Missouri's large underground storage facility, an underground warehouse facility, as well as a Marigold underground storage facility in Carthage, Missouri. All are often erroneously misidentified as Dulce Underground Base. Yes, there are some uneducated, gullible folks, and surprisingly, this includes some college graduates, as I stated, who actually believe that these are authentic photos of the Dulce Base. Now, let me emphasize again that there's not a single photo of the alleged Dulce Base anywhere on the internet, simply because there's no credible, tangible, irrefutable evidence whatsoever that the base exists, thus refuting and nullifying the claims of Phil Schneider. My final thoughts are that, yes, I believe that Dulce Base may not physically exist, but paraphysical phenomena seem to haunt Dulce, New Mexico. This is Norio Hayakawa from Rio Rancho, New Mexico.